Hello, friends. Welcome to our next episode on Fit as a Fiddle. I am super excited today. We have an awesome guest from across the world in California. She doesn't need an introduction in the physical therapy world at all. She is the lovely and beautiful Dr. Jen Fraboni. She is a physical therapist. She helps people online all over the world reduce their pain, and she runs two programs, the Mobility Method and the Optimal Body. And she also hosts and produced a podcast, Optimal Body, with her husband, as she's newlywed a couple months ago. And we just are so excited to have you on the show today, Jen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. I love what you're doing out in the community and really inspiring people through our profession, which I think is amazing.
Yes. And obviously a huge fan of you, all the work that you do and the outreach that you've had and the lives that you've influenced. I'm super excited for our guests to feel your energy and hear your voice on our platform as well. So before we get into that, could you please give us a little bit of an introduction? So if there are any people living under a rock right now who doesn't know who Jen is, they can get to know you and some of the programs and the work that you do out in our communities over the last couple of years.
Yeah, so I graduated from physical therapy in 2015. And actually, when I was in physical therapy school, that's when I started connecting with the calisthenic community down in Venice Beach. And all of a sudden, because I started going down and working out with the guys, one of them who was huge on Instagram started to post me. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, so do I just do handstands on my Instagram now? A bunch of people are starting to follow me. I don't know what this means. And all of this was just on, it was my hobby outside of physical therapy school, my way of escaping all of the tests and studies and just going down to the beach and playing. And through that, I just started to say, okay, I'm going to go along my fitness journey, say what I know so far, and just kind of educate along those lines. Once I graduated physical therapy school, that's when I decided, I want people to know I have more information rather than what I can do with my body, but what other people can do to help theirs. Yeah. And so I just started to just sprinkle in education. And from there, it started to expand way more than any of my fitness, acro yoga, calisthenic stuff. And I started to see what I thought was so basic and easy because I just graduated school. I felt like no one needs what I have to say. I'm still learning. But it really started to expand and blow up just from what I thought was the basics, knowing that, and then finally understanding, people don't know about their body at all. So if I give even what I think is the basics, it's able to then expand so much more and just open up the thought process in people's minds. And that's what I was trying to do. And so from there, I ended up creating, the business, the programs that you mentioned, the Mobility Method, and then the Optimal Body membership. And then now my husband, who's also a physical therapist, has really stepped into the business and it allowed me and helped me to grow. And we've created the Optimal Body podcast and are just continuing to learn in so many other ways, which I think is really cool. The podcast keeps us on our toes, making sure we're doing our research, making sure we know what we're talking about, and being able to deliver the information in a way that hopefully the general population can really take in.
I love it so much. Yes. And if anybody wants to follow Jen right away as we're listening to this podcast, so they can go through their stuff, please give us your Instagram handle.
Yeah, that's Doc Jen Fit. So across the board, everywhere, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, website, Doc Jen Fit.
Yes, amazing. And so actually, Jen, I think that's the first time that I heard about you. I was listening to a podcast about business, like starting your practice and by an Aaron something, I think. There was somebody.
Was that a Line podcast? Aaron Alexander? No,
it wasn't that. It was,
I think I know who you're talking about.
I know the person's face like in front of me, but I can't think of their last name. I would love to just like say their name. Physical.
It's really sad that I'm forgetting right now too.
It's really sad because I actually like listened to this person's podcast so much for so long. Is it Aaron?
I know exactly.
I think I'm screwing this up. Anyhow, maybe I'll just put that in the show notes just because I'm so sad that I can't remember now. I should have like looked it up prior, but I remember that you came onto their show and you were kind of explaining how it is to start a practice and start your own business, and just being able to put yourself out there and market, and also just speaking about the profession in general. So I'd love to transition into that now. This podcast is really for anybody to hear about, because I think we're kind of biased, but we freaking love physical therapy and we love being physical therapists. We love treating patients. We love educating. Jen does an amazing job out there on her platform and all of her different programs. But this is also specifically catered to either, pre-PTs or student PTs or PTs who maybe want to get a little bit more spark about why do we do what we do, and what are actually the endless possibilities within the physical therapy profession. So I know you have a lot to say about that, Jen, because you talk about that a lot in your work as well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think exactly like you said, the possibilities truly are limitless. There's so much that you can do when it comes to having this knowledge base of being a physical therapist, because now, being a doctor of physical therapy, we have the power to diagnose what's happening within the body, our own physical therapy diagnoses. And though, yes, you have to be in person to do that, it gives you the authority also to understand in such a greater way what's happening within the body and be able to educate. And what I really look as physical therapists as, we're educators. We're guiding people. We're facilitating them back into their body. We're not fixing anyone or putting them back together. We're guiding and educating. And so through education, just think of all the possibilities that you can do then. In terms of writing a book, opening a practice, teaching online, you are a body coach, and in such a deeper way, because of the foundation that you received in physical therapy, and then what you get to continue to learn on top of that. The learning never stops, right? We are never going to know enough about the body, and so many different bodies and everything that's happening. And so it just continues to give you the opportunity. And I remember, during my last year of physical therapy school, I met a chiropractor who was working on the person I was dating at the time. And she would go to his house and take all her tools and work on him for an hour. And it looked like a physical therapy session. And I was like, what are you doing? You're doing my job, but you're in the house. You're not in a clinic. You're doing it on your own. And she was just kind of talking me through it. And this is early on when we had gotten direct access, not needing in California, not needing to go through a MD in order to get or a DO in order to get a note and go to physical therapy. You can just go straight to a physical therapist. And so I remember sitting in our business class, and I'll use that lightly, and I asked, well, I know a chiropractor who's going around and treating her own clients. And now that we have direct access, can't we be doing that? Have my table, have my tools, and go to see my own patients without needing to be in a clinic or needing to be in a hospital or connected to one even. And she said, no, that can't happen. And I was really taken aback. You're telling your group of 60 something people here that is not possible. And it floored me. And so I bought a table and immediately when I started my first job, I also went to a CrossFit and asked if they would need a PT on the side. And so on top of my full-time job, I was then going on the side and seeing if I could build my own clientele. Lo and behold, I could. And so I wanted to prove, no, this is possible. We have access to be able to do this. We can write super bills. We can still work with insurance companies if we wanted to. The possibilities are there as long as you are able to step in and make it possible.
Yes. And I'm going to just bounce off of that and say I had the exact same experience. I had the exact same conversations with my own professors, directors in my program. And I remember one of the conversations that came up, and I'm really curious to actually hear what you feel about this. So I am also a former professional competitive dancer, and I'm also a former yoga teacher. And then I have a DPT degree. I also have a psychology degree. And so I remember there was some conversation that came up, and our superiors in our program had said, you can't mix those pieces together. PT is PT, your psych degree is your psych degree. You can't do yoga teaching or even think about that kind of thing in your practice. You have to be true to your DPT degree and just do that. And I'm going to tell you right now, I probably use my NYU psych degree a little bit more than I use my Columbia DPT degree in life, period. but especially with my patient care and the way that I communicate and a lot of the things that I do, I guess, I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I feel like so much of me as a dancer and as a yoga teacher and understanding the psychology and the brain and human behavior, and writing that honors thesis on motor development and then coming over to do a DPT, it shapes my practice. It shapes the fact that I do a podcast, and it shapes my nonprofit. It shapes everything that I do. And so I think that we've been given a lot of misinformation, and this is like very much a pitch to pre-PTs and student PTs and even physical therapists who are, maybe looking to think about something else is, how can you integrate things to really provide impact to your community? And I'd love for you to touch on that and also tell us ways that you do that in your own work as well.
I mean, that is one of the things that made me want to step outside of at least where I was working, and what I saw a lot of what was happening in the clinic is that even what I remember being told sometimes from some of my CIs was like, you don't have enough time to talk, like they're going to want to talk about their whole story. They're going to want to talk about when the pain, just guide them to where the pain is, when getting the insurance things that we need. And I'm like, but the story is what guides the pain. I need to know their story. And so being able to step out of a clinic, and I'm not saying that you need to step out of all clinics. We need clinics, we need people to still be in them. I just think there's a better way. Maybe we can create some privacy, because when I started working on my own, clearing the space for people to have time to talk, have the opportunity to cry, to break down on the table, because that is what happens a lot too. Pain is so emotional, and allowing that space and providing space for people to go there, I think was huge in my practice, and something that I just wasn't able to tap into inside an office, especially a busy office that's a lot of people, it's very stimulating, a lot going on. It doesn't always create the safest environment for someone to feel like they can emote fully and really dive into where that pain is truly coming from. And so I feel like I had to step outside the scope, learn about different breathing techniques, learn about I wanted to seek out the people who are doing things differently in physical therapy or chiropractic work, and what were they doing? Why was it working? Why is it different? And how could I start to integrate that into my practice? I've learned so much from yoga instructors that I use with people. I taught Pilates for 6 years, so I still use that. I've learned so much from personal trainers. This is one personal trainer at a gym that I worked at, and I would just shadow him because his mind and the way that he thought about movement and what he did just taught me so much. And so you can learn from literally anyone. And as long as we're all helping and trying to push a human forward and getting them to their goal, that's essentially what we're doing as physical therapists. You have to open up your scope of, it's not just movement, it's not just the body, it's not just my touch that can help, but there's so much more outside that I can be introduced to, so I can open up my toolbox and be able to help people. I mean, it's just, it opens up the scope of who we are, what we do, and who we can refer to, because we don't have to do it all. I think that's really important to know too.
Yeah. And on that note, how do you know in your practice and in the work that you do, how do you know when something is like, I want to refer this to somebody, or how do you, and who that person is? What is your approach to doing that?
I know that I do want to talk about nutrition with my clients. What you're putting in your body is hugely impactful of how our fluids are moving, and then how our nerves are going to be impacted, and the pain that we're going to feel. That's all going to be impactful, but we don't get that training enough to be able to guide that. So I can open up generalities. I can give some science and some research. However, if I know that someone needs more guidance than just my general guideline, then I'm going to refer them to an RD. So I have people that I refer to. I have people that I think people should work with and are highly recommended. I also know that I would refer to a pelvic floor therapist if someone needs some internal work. I don't do internal work. So I love pelvic PT. I love talking about it. I'll do all the external, but I don't do internal. So I'll refer to pelvic floor PT, which is, it's so wild to me that it's still not a known thing in our world at all. So it's something that I feel like I'm repeating myself, especially on my platform, over and over and over again. But same with like any dizziness. Okay, go see a physical therapist that specializes. There's so many, even within our scope, of physical therapy that I may not do every day. So I'm going to refer out to someone else. And then alone, you know, a psychologist, if I know someone needs a little bit more, a RD, who else do I refer to? I do refer a lot of my patients, once they've come to a certain point, go to a personal trainer, because you don't need me anymore. You need someone who's going to hold you accountable to your movement practice.
Yeah.
Now. So I just think creating the team and not having you do it all is super important.
Absolutely. And I love that you just said that there's so many ways to either collaborate or discharge to other people as well, because there's always a time and place where you can work with somebody. And then there's, like you just brought up, like for a fitness trainer or a personal trainer or a Pilates instructor or somebody who does, you know, and the way that I say that to my patients is, once they're, you know, functionally feeling strong and they've reached all their physical therapy goals and they're either pain-free or managing their pain very well independently and have the self-care strategies and the tools to do so, I'm like, I'm not going to count your reps and sets. I'm going to say congratulations.
Yeah.
There is a plethora of people who will be very happy to, exactly like you said, keep you accountable and help you through the process, and, you know, make sure that you're doing your exercises and all of that. And so I think it's important for our audience as well to know that there are different aspects of care, and there's a lot of different people that can help you, and PTs are just one piece of that puzzle, even though biasly speaking, that I think that we do a lot, actually, especially with our training and our DPT degrees. We learned so much about the human body. We dissect cadavers from, you know, skin to bones, from head to toe, and we know so much about every single organ system and, you know, the musculoskeletal system so well. So we have so much to offer, but also we have so much that we also don't have in our scope of practice. And there's so much that other people are more well-versed in, that at the end of the day, in our opinion, we want our patients to get better. And so whatever that means and whoever they need to see, just like Jen said, there's so many ways that we can collaborate with people in order to make that happen for our patients.
Yeah.
So I love that. Okay, so let's dive into a little bit of kind of your inspiration. It's kind of like the deeper, like mushy-gushy stuff. What is your inspiration to stay into this profession and keep this profession going? And I want to kind of say that with a, you know, little sidetrack, that I think that there's a lot of misinformation about what PTs do. You know, I've heard so many people who have no clue be like, oh yeah, you massage people all day long, you know, those kinds of things that I'm like, but for all the misinformation out there, and for people who don't fully understand our profession, and for people who are in the profession who don't feel inspired enough to really understand the endless opportunities and possibilities, like we kind of talked about in the very beginning, and kind of circling this back to the end, what do you feel about that? And what do you have to say to the community?
You know, my biggest thing is, we're always going to have so much work to do, so much work. Pain is immediately thought of as bad and scary, and we're going to have pain in life. That's 100% going to happen. So how do we teach people, exactly like you said, how to manage it? How do we teach people how to lower the risk of injury, how to improve their overall health and well-being? That is what we can do as physical therapists, because we have so much knowledge within our body, because we can see things that people are never going to see. Like, they're just not. You come to a physical therapist, we're going to be able to look at you the moment you walk in the door, the moment you get up off the chair, and see things that we can be like, we can maybe optimize this, or see if it needs to be looked at, or see what you're feeling. I mean, there's so much that goes into physical therapy that includes involving a patient in their life. Like, what are they doing at work? How are they moving? How can we optimize how they're feeling on a day-to-day basis? I think that's so incredibly powerful. And the moment it really clicked for me was in physical therapy school, when, you know, working, you'd get a lot of patients who would say, oh, you know, after I run 2 to 3 miles, my knee starts to hurt. But then I also am looking at the other side, where we worked with patients who have cerebral palsy, who have amputees, and they're saying, okay, this is what I have been born with, and it looks super painful. Sometimes it looks awful, and yet I'm going to go run a marathon. I'm going to go do yoga. I'm going to go figure it out. I'm going to a man who, lived with severe cerebral palsy and could barely get down and up off of his wheelchair, but decided to lose weight so that he could continue to be autonomous in that. And I'm like, that's a person who's using every ounce of what he has available, where we're barely tapping into that when we're able-bodied, because we forget about things until the problem arises. Even today, I was on a call with incredible entrepreneurs, and so many of them even admitted, oh yeah, I don't think about my health until something happens, people are reactive to their bodies. So how do we start getting them to be proactive? I think that can be such a powerful place for a physical therapist, not to just say, hey, I'm here for after you see the doctor. No, I'm here for life. Like, come and you should see me at least once a year, even if you feel like you have nothing going on. You should see a pelvic floor therapist at least once a year, even if you feel like you got nothing going on. Like, how can we start to put that in people's mindset, that we are here to actually identify things that you may not be aware of, so we can help you to prevent injuries, so that you can continue to lift your kid and play on the floor and get up and down off the floor without all these aches and pains. I think, learning to empower people in their bodies is such a gift, and we should be using that so much more rather than the reactive practice of medicine, but we get to be the proactive care for people. And that can be such a powerful tool. We're not there to just massage people, put ultrasounds, or do electrical stimulation. We're here to actually empower people to move and feel something different.
Yeah, and to tag along that too, the reason for that is to have that amazing quality of life, because we know that movement is life, and being able to engage with your environment, and it doesn't matter if you have all of your limbs or not, but to be able to do the things that you love to do, and to be able to just move around in your environment, or even just do the basic life activities like brushing your teeth and combing your hair, requires movement and requires effort. And so I think that as PTs, as the movement experts, with the training that we have and like the scope of practice that we have, I just think that I'm obsessed with the work that we do, and I love it. And as a pelvic floor PT, I completely agree. I wish that we could have, I talk about it all the time. Let's first start with getting everybody a proper required, just like you get your 6-week checkup with your OB, get that 6-week checkup, or even sooner, or before you're pregnant, or while you're pregnant with your pelvic floor PT is what I'm working on. But that's another story. But in general, it's just, there's so much we can do. Like Jen is saying, is that there's prophylaxis and there's prevention, and medicine doesn't talk about that. And medicine is not geared towards that really at all. There's talks about it here and there, but you go to your dentist twice a year to get a cleaning of your teeth, just that one, like 3 inches of your body. What about all of the rest of your body? What about your shoulder, your hips, and the things that actually get you out of the car and, into the doors of, making society operate functionally. So I'm totally on board. I hope that as visionaries, people in our community can gather together to get this movement forward and push it forward. But you're absolutely right, Jen, that if PTs can think about their work a little bit more as life-changing, which it absolutely is, not as I'm going to be putting a hot pack on somebody or doing a joint mobilization on this person or teaching this guy how to, get a little bit more hip extension. Those are great. But I think that taking it back to the why that's important for somebody else's life, and kind of bringing it back to, why did you become a PT, or why do you want to be a PT in the first place? And just feeling that it's more than you, and it's about, just changing someone's life can be so important in helping you keep doing what you're doing with a little bit more passion and love and energy as well. Yeah, I love it. So do you have anything else to add to our listeners today? You can talk about your programs, or, any of the other work that you're doing as well. Do you have anything else to share?
I think just as you go into the world, social media has gotten it's gotten a lot louder, and sometimes it can feel a little scary. Maybe you want to put yourself out there, but you're afraid of judgment, or you're getting into like the camps of like, this person's right, this person's wrong. The only thing I will say about that is be wary. We're all learning, and we're all trying to do our best to help people. So what can you learn from everyone? And I think in physical therapy, especially, we get to empower each other and continue to support one another rather than trying to tear people down and say who's right, who's wrong. That doesn't get us anywhere. So how can we have better constructive feedback if that's what you want to do, and support the profession to continue to move forward? I think what I've seen a little bit lately is just, or I would say throughout the last couple of years, is starting to become these divisions of, well, I believe in this and I don't believe in that. And it's like, but we're all just trying to help people to move. We're all trying to help people to see something different and open up their mindsets. And so I think as you continue into this profession, you're going to learn a ton. You're going to hopefully continue to learn a ton. There's going to be a lot you learn in school, and those principles might change, and they're going to continue to change, and that's okay. And I think continuing to keep that mindset open of like, here's what's working for me now, but it can change. And here, why might this technique, even if I think it's old or it's not right, why might that be working for that person? Can I talk to them maybe and see, what are their patients feeling? What outcomes are they getting? What can I learn from this person? And I think we can learn so much from everyone within our profession, and continuing to move it forward, just like you're saying, so that we get access to people more readily, so that we're not cut off by insurance companies, but we start to build this norm of, well, you should see a physical therapist twice a year at least, like how do we get that into the system? How do we get that into becoming the norm and changing the mindset? I remember like watching something on the doctors, and I think it was the doctors or it was some TV show, and a physical therapist was on, and they're like, oh yeah, here's the ultrasound machine that I use, and this is why I use it. And I'm just like, this is all you're going to talk about? This is so sad. This is not, you're pigeonholing what we do, and that's okay. You can talk about that one aspect, but then let's talk about it in a greater scale. Let's talk about how we really impact lives through getting people to move different and feel something different. We have to continue to move that message forward. And I think there's so many different tools and ways that we can do that, but continuing to spread this message as one, I think it can be so incredibly impactful, and we get to be heard on big media. We get to be, out there and just helping to continue to change. And I would say someone who, like for me, Kelly Sterett was someone I looked up to. He really changed the game of how we can do physical therapy, and he started it very early, doing his own practice, doing it out of CrossFits before a lot of other PTs. And he started getting in media, and he started writing books, and he really started to help the profession go forward. And so no matter what people might think about him, because I've been in physical therapy courses that are kind of making fun of some of his things, but I'm like, but look at the good that he's done. He's helped to put physical therapy on the map. He's helped to awaken what people think of it and how we can use it. So no matter what you may think of someone, just remember, we're all trying to push it forward, and do you to continue that and see how you can support others. I think it's just, we all get to continue to support each other.
I love that so much. That was so well said. And I'm so grateful that our audience got to have a little piece of Jen today on Fit as a Fiddle. If anybody would like to follow Jen on Instagram or Facebook or really everything else, again, it's at DocJenFit. Again, she also has a podcast with her husband that you can look at, which is called the Optimal Body Podcast. Did I get that right? Yes. Okay. Optimal Body Podcast. So tune into that. There's some awesome content for physical therapists or not, really for everybody to learn from. And so thank you so much, Jen, for being on the show today. Thank you for making time for us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciated this.